Ambassador Qrell-Vex adjusted his ceremonial breathing apparatus, the purple filters wheezing slightly as he prepared to address the Galactic Council. 14 species had gathered in the Grand Chamber of Nexus Station, their various forms of respiratory equipment creating a symphony of mechanical hissing and gurgling. The humans? Well, they just breathed. Like savages. Esteemed colleagues, Qrell-Vex began, his voice carrying the refined tones of a species that had mastered interstellar travel when most civilizations were still figuring out fire. We have a problem. The humans are crying. A collective ripple of confusion swept through the chamber. Commander Yilthmore of the Hegemony fleet clicked her mandibles nervously. Crying? Is this some form of biological warfare? Worse, Qrell-Vex sighed, his 4 eyes dimming with what could only be described as exhaustion. It appears to be genuine emotion. The Nexary representative, a being whose name was literally unpronounceable to anyone with fewer than 3 throats, vibrated with what passed for laughter among his kind. Surely you jest, Ambassador. We've observed human behavior for cycles now. They're primitive, yes, but they follow standard patterns of conquest and resource acquisition. That's what we thought, Qrell-Vex replied, pulling up a holographic display that showed a small blue-green planet spinning lazily in space. Earth. Population, approximately 8 billion humans. Military capability, laughably outdated. Expected resistance duration, 6 standard rotations. The display flickered, showing what appeared to be a human female with dark hair and remarkably expressive eyes. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the human vessel Defiant. She was the first to make contact with our advanced scout, Lieutenant Zorthkek. A smaller, more nervous-looking being near the back of the chamber raised what might have been a hand. If I may, Ambassador, the human didn't attempt to negotiate terms of surrender? Oh, she negotiated all right, Qrell-Vex said, his tone growing more sardonic by the moment. She looked at our weapons, our shields, our superior technology, and she started crying. The chamber fell silent except for the various breathing apparatuses and the soft hum of the station's life support systems. She cried? Commander Yilthmore repeated, as if the concept was foreign to her. Tears streaming down her face, Qrell-Vex confirmed. But here's the interesting part. She wasn't crying from fear. She was crying because, and I quote, "It's so beautiful to finally meet someone else in this vast universe." The Nexary representative stopped vibrating. Beautiful? She found our war fleet beautiful? Apparently so. Then she did something even more disturbing. She asked if we were hungry. A being that looked like a cross between a jellyfish and a filing cabinet made a sound that might have been incredulous. Hungry? Was this some form of ritualistic offering? That's what we thought, Qrell-Vex said, manipulating the hologram to show the interior of the human ship. So we agreed to this. Dinner. Standard protocol for accepting surrender gifts, you understand. The display showed what appeared to be a large room filled with humans of various sizes, all sitting around tables laden with colorful substances that were presumably food. In the center, several beings in environmental suits sat awkwardly on chairs clearly not designed for their anatomy. This is where things got complicated, Qrell-Vex continued. The humans began asking questions. Not about our technology, not about our empire, not about terms of surrender. They asked about our families. Families? The jellyfish filing cabinet hybrid made that sound again. What strategic value could such information possibly hold? None. That's the problem. Qrell-Vex zoomed in on a human male with graying hair and kind eyes. This is Dr. Marcus Webb. He's a xenobiologist. He spent 47 minutes asking Lieutenant Zorthkek about Proximan mating rituals. Not for intelligence purposes. He was just curious. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Various species spoke in their native tongues, creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and electronic beeps. Qrell-Vex waited for the noise to subside. "It gets worse," he announced. They started sharing their own stories. This Webb creature told us about his daughter, who died in something called a car accident. He showed us pictures. And then the others started crying too. The humans were engaging in psychological warfare? Commander Yilthmore asked hopefully. No, Qrell-Vex replied flatly. They were genuinely sad. About people they'd never met. From a species they'd encountered 20 minutes earlier. The display shifted to show Captain Vasquez again, but now she was standing beside a Proximan in a containment suit. Both appeared to be looking at something off-screen. Captain Vasquez asked Lieutenant Zorth-Kek if he had children. When he mentioned his clutch of 47 offspring, she didn't express horror at the alien reproduction methods. She asked if he missed them. And did he? The question came from a species that resembled a walking tree with too many branches. That's classified, Qrell-Vex said quickly. But the point is, the humans made him think about it. They made all of us think about it. This was supposed to be a simple conquest. We had superior firepower, better technology, and the element of surprise. Instead, we found ourselves in what they call a potluck dinner. A what? Several voices asked simultaneously. Apparently, it's when everyone brings food to share. The humans had prepared dishes from their various cultural backgrounds. They insisted we try something called pizza. I hate to admit it, but it was surprisingly palatable. The Nexari representative had resumed his vibrating, but now it seemed more agitated. This is all very touching, Ambassador, but surely the humans' emotional responses don't change the tactical situation? That's where you're wrong, Qrell-Vex said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Because after dinner, Captain Vasquez made a proposal. She suggested that instead of conquering Earth, we consider a different approach. What kind of approach? Commander Yilthmore leaned forward, her interest clearly piqued. Cultural exchange. Trade agreements. Mutual protection pacts. She said, and I quote again, "We're all just trying to survive in this big, scary universe. Maybe we could try doing it together." The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence felt different. Heavier somehow. The High Command's response. The tree-like being asked. That's complicated, Qrell-Vex admitted. Admiral Korr-Vash ordered a full assault on the human homeworld. Standard planetary subjugation protocols. Estimated casualties, 90% of the human population. Estimated? The jellyfish filing cabinet hybrid picked up on the word choice immediately. Yes. Estimated. Because the humans did something we didn't expect. Qrell-Vex manipulated the hologram to show a view of Earth from space, but now it was surrounded by what appeared to be a massive fleet of ships. They called for help. Help from whom? Commander Yilthmore asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. From us. From all of us. They sent messages to every species they'd encountered, every diplomatic contact they'd made. They didn't ask for military aid. They asked for witnesses. The display showed a stream of incoming vessels, each from a different species, all converging on the small blue planet. Witnesses to what? The Nexari representative had stopped vibrating entirely. To what they called the day the universe lost its innocence. Qrell-Vex's voice carried a note of something that might have been admiration. They said they understood they couldn't win. They said they'd probably all die. But they wanted someone to remember that they tried to do things differently. The chamber erupted again, but this time the chatter was more subdued, more thoughtful. And then, Qrell-Vex continued, they did something that no species in the history of the galaxy has ever done before. They broadcast their surrender. Their surrender? The tree-like being sounded confused. But that's standard protocol. Not a military surrender, Qrell-Vex clarified. An emotional one. They broadcast their fears, their hopes, their dreams. They showed us their children, their art, their music. They told us about their mistakes and their triumphs. And they asked us to remember them kindly. The display now showed thousands of human faces, each telling their story, each sharing a piece of themselves with the vast universe. By the time Admiral Korr-Vash reached Earth's orbit, there were 47 different species ships surrounding the planet. Not to fight. Just to watch. To witness. To remember. Qrell-Vex paused, his 4 eyes focusing on different members of the assembled council. The humans made us complicit in their fate. They made us care about them. And in doing so, they made us question everything we thought we knew about conquest, about survival, about what it means to be truly civilized. The silence stretched on, broken only by the mechanical sounds of life support systems and the soft hum of the station's engines. What happened next? Commander Yilthmore asked quietly. Qrell-Vex's breathing apparatus wheezed once before he responded. Admiral Korr-Vash gave the order to commence bombardment. The humans, true to their word, didn't fight back. They just waited. And watched. And cried. And then? The jellyfish filing cabinet hybrid pressed. Then something unprecedented happened, Qrell-Vex said, his voice barely above a whisper. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a military commander refused a direct order from the High Command. The implications of this statement rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. Military discipline was the foundation of interstellar civilization. Without it, chaos would reign. Admiral Korr-Vash refused to fire? The tree-like being asked. Not just refused. He turned his fleet around and left. Said he couldn't be party to what he called the murder of hope itself. Qrell-Vex manipulated the hologram one final time, showing the human captain, Elena Vasquez, standing on the bridge of her ship, still crying, but now with what appeared to be relief. The humans didn't win through superior technology or military might, he concluded. They won by making us understand that conquest without compassion is just elaborate murder. They cried first, yes. But by the end, we were all crying. The chamber remained silent as the implications sank in. The humans had changed everything, not through violence or threats, but through the simple act of genuine emotion. So what happens now? Commander Yilthmore asked. Now, Qrell-Vex said, we figure out how to live in a universe where warfare might actually be obsolete. The humans have shown us a different way. Whether we choose to follow it, well, that's why we're here. The hologram faded, leaving the assembled beings to contemplate a future none of them had imagined possible just cycles before. 3 standard rotations later, Ambassador Qrell-Vex found himself doing something he never thought possible, sitting in what humans called a coffee shop on the surface of Earth, trying to figure out how to drink a liquid that was apparently essential to human civilization. The trick, said Dr. Marcus Webb, the same xenobiologist who had asked about Proximan mating rituals during that fateful dinner, is to not overthink it. It's just hot bean water with caffeine. Just hot bean water, Qrell-Vex repeated, his breathing apparatus creating small bubbles in the cup. Your species has built an entire social structure around hot bean water. Well, when you put it like that, it does sound a bit ridiculous, Webb laughed, a sound that Qrell-Vex was still getting used to. But then again, most things humans do sound ridiculous until you try them. The coffee shop was a study in controlled chaos. Humans bustled about with their steaming cups, some hunched over glowing screens, others engaged in animated conversations. In the corner, a Nexari delegate sat awkwardly at a table designed for beings with spines, while a young human female patiently explained the concept of art school to him. Ambassador, Webb said, his tone shifting to something more serious, I have to ask. Are you really here just for the cultural exchange program? Qrell-Vex set down his cup with a soft clink. Dr. Webb, I'm here because my government is terrified. We've spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of conquest, and your species made it irrelevant in the span of a single meal. We tend to do that, Webb said with a grin. Make things complicated, I mean. It's kind of our thing. Before Qrell-Vex could respond, his communication device chirped urgently. The holographic display showed the stern face of Supreme Commander Thexnal of the Hegemony High Command. Ambassador Qrell-Vex, the commander's voice carried across the coffee shop, causing several humans to look up with curiosity rather than alarm. Report immediately to Nexus Station. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Qrell-Vex asked, though he suspected he already knew. The human infection is spreading. 3 more systems have refused military action orders. They're citing something called ethical concerns. Dr. Webb leaned back in his chair, a knowing smile playing on his lips. Ethical concerns? Imagine that. This is no laughing matter. Commander Thexnal's image flickered with what might have been frustration. The Corellian Empire has requested mediation for a border dispute. Mediation. They want to talk about it. And this is bad because? Qrell-Vex asked, though he was careful to keep his tone neutral. Because talking doesn't generate profit. It doesn't establish dominance. It doesn't. The commander paused, his multiple eyes narrowing. Are you drinking something, Ambassador? It's called coffee, Qrell-Vex said. The humans consider it a social lubricant. Social lubricant? The commander's voice rose an octave. Ambassador, return to base immediately. That's an order. The transmission cut off, leaving Qrell-Vex staring at the empty space where the hologram had been. Around him, the coffee shop had gone quiet, the humans listening with the polite attention they seemed to give to everything. Well, Webb said, breaking the silence, that sounded fun. Are you going? I have to, Qrell-Vex replied. Military discipline is the foundation of our civilization. Is it though? The question came from a young human male who had been working quietly at a nearby table. I mean, no offense, but your civilization was about to commit genocide because someone told you to. Is that really the kind of foundation you want to build on? Qrell-Vex turned to study the human. He was young, maybe 25 standard years, with the kind of earnest expression that suggested he actually cared about the answer. What would you suggest instead? Qrell-Vex asked. I don't know, the young man said, shrugging. Maybe try asking yourself what you actually want, instead of what you're supposed to want. The simplicity of the statement was staggering. Qrell-Vex had spent his entire life following orders, following protocols, following the established way of doing things. The idea of asking himself what he wanted was so foreign it was almost incomprehensible. I want, he said slowly, to understand how you do it. Do what? Webb asked. Live without fear. Your species knew we could destroy you. You knew you couldn't fight back. But instead of cowering or trying to negotiate from a position of weakness, you invited us to dinner. How? The coffee shop erupted in what Qrell-Vex was learning to recognize as typical human behavior. Everyone started talking at once, offering their opinions, their theories, their personal experiences. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers stood up from her table. Honey, she said, addressing Qrell-Vex directly, it's not that we don't have fear. We're terrified most of the time. But we learned a long time ago that being afraid doesn't mean you have to be cruel. But your military, Qrell-Vex protested. Your weapons, your history of warfare, oh, we're excellent at violence, the young man said matter-of-factly. Probably better than most species, if we're being honest. But we're also excellent at forgiveness, at starting over, at finding common ground. We choose which one to use. Choose? Qrell-Vex repeated. Free will, Webb said. The revolutionary concept that maybe, just maybe, individuals can make decisions based on their own moral compass rather than blind obedience to authority. Qrell-Vex's communication device chirped again, this time with an emergency signal. When he activated it, the hologram showed not Commander Thexnal, but Captain Elena Vasquez, still on the bridge of her ship, still with those remarkably expressive eyes. "Ambassador," she said, "we're receiving reports that several hegemony fleets are converging on Earth. Is this part of the cultural exchange program?" I don't know," Qrell-Vex admitted. "My orders are to return to Nexus Station immediately." "Then you should go," Vasquez said simply. "But Ambassador? Remember what we talked about. Remember that there's always a choice." The transmission ended, leaving Qrell-Vex alone with his thoughts and a room full of humans who were looking at him with expressions he was beginning to recognize as concern. "They're coming to finish what they started," he said finally. "The High Command has decided that the human influence is too dangerous to allow to spread." "Well," Webb said, standing up and straightening his jacket, "I suppose we should get ready to cry again." "You're not going to fight?" Qrell-Vex asked, genuinely surprised. "Oh, we'll fight if we have to," the paint-stained woman said. "But we'll cry first. And if we win, we'll cry after. Because that's what you do when you have to hurt someone, even if they're trying to hurt you." "That makes no sense," Qrell-Vex said. "Tactically, emotionally compromising yourself before battle is human," Webb finished. "It's human. And that's exactly why it works." 2 hours later, Qrell-Vex found himself back aboard his transport ship, heading for Nexus Station. But instead of preparing his report for the High Command, he found himself thinking about hot bean water and paint-stained fingers and the way humans could make you care about things you'd never considered important. His pilot, a young Proximan named Jector, glanced back at him nervously. "Ambassador, we're receiving multiple fleet broadcasts. Should I respond?" "What are they saying?" Qrell-Vex asked. "They're asking about the humans, sir. They want to know if the stories are true. If they really cried." Qrell-Vex activated the ship's communication array, broadcasting on the general fleet frequency. Dozens of ships, thousands of beings, all listening. "This is Ambassador Qrell-Vex," he said. "Yes, the stories are true. The humans cried. They cried because they were happy to meet us. They cried because they were sad for our loneliness. They cried because they understood that we were all just trying to survive in a universe that's too big and too empty and too cold for any of us to face alone." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Voices from dozens of species, all asking questions, all wanting to understand. "But Ambassador," came a voice from the flagship, "what about discipline? What about order? What about the way things have always been done?" "I've been thinking about that," Qrell-Vex said. "And I think maybe the humans are right. Maybe the way things have always been done isn't the way things should be done." "Are you refusing your orders, Ambassador?" The question hung in the space between stars, waiting for an answer that would change everything. "I'm choosing," Qrell-Vex said finally. "I'm choosing to believe that there's a better way. I'm choosing to believe that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty, that survival doesn't have to mean conquest, that meeting someone different doesn't have to mean destroying them." "And if you're wrong?" The voice was quieter now, more uncertain. "Then I'll cry," Qrell-Vex said. "I'll cry for what we could have been, for what we could have learned, for all the friends we never made because we were too afraid to try." The communication array erupted in chatter as hundreds of beings across the fleet began talking to each other, sharing doubts and fears and hopes they'd never dared voice before. "Ambassador," Jector said quietly, "what happens now?" "Now," Qrell-Vex said, "we go home. But not to report to the High Command. We go home to tell our families, our friends, our neighbors about what we've learned. We go home to plant seeds of doubt in the certainty of conquest, seeds of hope in the possibility of peace. And if the High Command orders us to return, then we'll have to choose again. All of us. Together." The ship turned away from Nexus Station, away from orders and protocols and the comfortable certainty of military discipline. Behind them, one by one, other ships began to turn as well, following not orders but conscience, not duty but hope. On Earth, in a small coffee shop, Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his cup of hot bean water and smiled. Outside, the sky was full of stars, and for the first time in galactic history, none of them were weapons aimed at his world. The humans cried first, he said to the empty shop. But they didn't cry last. They made sure of that. And in the vast darkness of space, where civilizations had spent millennia learning to fear each other, something new began to grow. Not empire or conquest or dominance, but something the humans had always known, and the galaxy was finally ready to learn, that the greatest strength wasn't in the ability to destroy, but in the courage to care. The revolution had begun with tears. It would continue with hope.